Well, welcome, everybody. Welcome to the COSME Astrology Podcast. My name is Lisa Warman, and if you are new here to COSME, which I think, yes, a couple people are, COSME is an astrology studio, and it is meant for people to come together and to be in real time with each other, to experience each other's energy, and be one-to-one. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for supporting astrology. Thank you for supporting astrologers, and most importantly, thank you for supporting your self-development through astrology. Mm-hmm. So backstory on COSME, I think this is so important to tell, is COSME was manifested during the 2022 eclipses, but more specifically, it was when Neptune, Jupiter, and Venus were conjunct, and this was in Pisces. And I went to a conference here in Tucson. It was the OPA Astrology Conference, and you were there, Lizzie. That's where I met Taylor. But when I went to this conference, I really thought that I was one of the only astrologers here in Tucson. And I felt disconnected. I just felt like I hadn't found my community. And I was relying a lot on the internet to find my community through astrology, which, you know, you can definitely do that, but you're not experiencing people in real time. So I got to OPA. I met 100 plus astrologers. I was able to have conversations about astrology in real time with people. And, you know, we're talking about our birth charts. We're talking about our experiences through our birth charts. And to actually be able to speak the language of astrology fluently with other astrologers, students of astrology, and astrology enthusiasts, it lit me up, and I will never forget that feeling. And I really wanted to create a place after going to that conference where people could come together and they could experience that feeling and didn't have to wait for a conference, you know, like they could go to a place and be able to have conversations about astrology or their birth chart or wellness or whatever, healing, you know. So that is what COSME is, and that's why I created it, and it's still in its infancy. I opened this space in August of 2023, which is kind of crazy because it was a Venus retrograde, but anyway. Yeah, so the whole point is what we're doing right now, to connect, to be able to experience each other's vibration, each other's energy. You know, right now, if we all went like palm to palm, we would actually feel each other. We could pick up on intuitive hits. There's a difference when we're in person versus the internet. And, you know, I think the internet has a place. I'm not hating on the World Wide Web, but I do believe that experiencing each other and seeing each other's faces, moving together, breathing together, all of that is so important. So again, thank you so much for being here. Mm-hmm. So how many of you are new to astrology? Okay. Cool. How many of you are students of astrology? How many of you are practicing astrologers? Okay, cool. So that's also the point. This space is for everybody. It's for people who have been studying for 50 years. It's for people who are brand new to the practice. And, you know, we all get to exchange information here and energy. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our guest speaker and also co-host. So co-host is Taylor Shuler. She's on the show with me almost every time. Took a little break there. Mm-hmm. And then our special guest, we are so excited to have Cameron Allen on the show. So Cameron, welcome.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I love this place. This place is so nice. Like everybody here that I've already met and everybody here that I have met, and also I owe a few of y'all some hugs because I haven't hugged everybody in here yet. But yeah, I'm just so thankful to be here, and I appreciate the reception from everybody. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for coming out. So just so y'all know, Cameron and Ashley Scott, she's sitting there. They have both offered classes here on Thursday night, Friday night, and then tomorrow there's another class that's happening, and these classes have just been so amazing. And yeah, I'm just excited to have you both in the space and for your wisdom to come through. So a little bit about Cameron. Cameron began his path to understanding mind-body awareness with a degree in health and sports science and psychology. Seeing that there was more to understand outside of the colonized education system, he began seeking understanding through direct experience with nature, astrology, herbalism, root work, yoga, Ayurveda, and other indigenous technologies. Cameron is a practicing astrologer and herbalist that focus on holistic health, predictive forecasting, and it enhances the present moment. So Cameron is also a board member for the International Society of Astrological Research, that's ISAR, and a co-founder of the Memphis Black Healers Collective. So Cameron, you know, this is your bio and it's lovely, but I also know that there is a backstory to you being an astrologer. And before we started recording, we were all discussing in short term, like what we do in our life molds the next step. And a lot of what we all have done in our lives has really informed our astrology practice. And, you know, we're astrologers, but there's a lot of layers that go into that. You're not just, you know, forecasting and delineating a chart. So can you tell everybody like where you come from and what you're all about, what you studied?
Yeah, for sure. There's always so many different iterations of how I express where I've been and how I've come to where I am now. But long story short, even just starting out in college, I was studying psychology and health and sports science, just having to do with the relationship with the body and the mind, because that's something that I'm going to have the rest of my life, and so is everyone else, right? And so I started there, and then after college, I had some very interesting nonlinear experiences where I had relationships with plants, and they started communicating with me, and the plants told me to start talking to and working with the planets, and from there, I just started learning about everything. Around that time, I started working at a spiritual supply store, so it was like 40 hours a week for like 7 years, just like herbs, crystals, astrology, magic, essential oils, body work, all these things, just integrating all these things into my life and into my practice as I could. So that's the long story short of how I got here. Right now, the most current iteration is I'm in school to become an Ayurvedic practitioner, and I'm also in my second yoga teacher training program and always just like studying a lot of different things. I'm in like 2 different movement programs as well. So really just making it like really holistic as possible, and also inviting everybody to even consider, what do you think holistic is? Because whatever it is today, in 2 years, it's going to be even more whole if you make sure that you like take the time to think about things like that. So yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that. And there's so much truth to that. Think about 2 years ago, you know, like we have made quantum leaps, in my opinion, as a society, like both ways, but like, you know, there is a door, a portal, like information that has been open to us about being more whole. And I love that because, you know, I always think of the word integrity, and integrity is integral, and integral is whole, and whole is holy. So there's a beauty to that, and a beauty to connecting with that wholeness.
Totally. Yeah. And even to add to that, that's literally with what healing means and like health means, you know, to be whole.
Yeah.
And so all those things like coming together, just it's beautiful. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Awesome. So welcome. We're so happy to have you again. And then, of course, we have Taylor Shuler. So Taylor Shuler is an award-winning professional astrologer, a sustainable business coach, founder of Cosmic Career Clarity Breakthrough Business Blueprint, and host on the Thriving Astrology and More podcast. And it's her YouTube channel. So Taylor helps talented professionals find their niche, follow their purpose, and launch their soul-aligned business. And she helps entrepreneurs optimize their business to get to the next level of success. I would say, Taylor, you have a liberal arts approach to astrology. You kind of mix and match. But do you want to talk a little bit about, you know, what has informed your practice now and where you come from and how you got here?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Taylor Shuler, as Lisa said, and I think so. A lot of what you were saying, Cameron, I was like, wow, this is so interesting, and just integrating it all. But I guess where I would start is just having like my quarter life crisis was sort of like Saturn return and nodal opposition in your mid to late 20s. And at that point in my life, I had like lost a job. I was going from this legal background, paralegal, very corporate type of let's go get them. Maybe I'll be a doctor. Maybe I'll be in business school, whatever. I actually went to Paris, went to business school, got a master's in cross-cultural and sustainable business management, and took my spring break to go get a permaculture diploma in Portugal, which was pretty fun. And that permaculture design certificate was really like the launch of everything for me. I learned about biodynamics and the moon, and I started to put together this stuff I was doing in Paris with people from all over the world, from America, from Norway, from Brazil, and see that business could be done in this radically new and different way. I was learning about biomimicry at the same time as biodynamics, and just realizing there are these different pattern languages, right? Then I come back to the US when I'm done with my master's, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll be an HR person. I don't know what to do. Got to get in there and try to make things better for people, because I graduated into the recession from college in '09. So we couldn't really get jobs. And if you were lucky, you'd get a job for like 30 grand, which after taxes is below the poverty line, right? It was like 17,000 after taxes, which was the poverty line for one person. And so I'm like, I got to help people. I got to help people get jobs. I got to help people make money. I got to help people have their basic needs met so that they can live the American dream, live a good life. And when I came back to the States, I had a friend who was like, have you heard this secret language name book or website? And it took me back to when I was about 10, walking around Costco reading the Book of Birthdays. It was the same guy who wrote that book, Juice Jeffers. And that's what really brought me back into astrology, threw me into astrology, had the great conjunction of Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto on my sun in 2020. And here I am. So just trying to help people live good lives and fuck the system.
Yeah. So, yeah, the whole point of that was just to show that, astrology isn't just reading an astrology book and getting out. Well, it can be, sure. Like, you can just read an astrology book and get out there and start practicing and reading charts for people if that's what calls to you. But really, our whole lives do inform our practice. And, even if you're not a practicing astrologer, your whole lives inform your birth chart and vice versa. So, yeah, really beautiful. And thank you both for sharing all of that. Mm-hmm. Cool. So we're going to jump right into it then, I think. We're here to forecast May 2024. And we have a few topics that we're going to touch upon. So Pluto's going to station retrograde. We're going to have a new moon in Taurus. Mercury will ingress into Taurus. There is a Jupiter COSME. Mars is going to conjoin the North Node. And I'll give the dates too. On the 19th, Gemini season starts on the 20th. On the 22nd, Jupiter, Venus, Neptune, and the moon will conjoin. We'll get into that one. I think that's going to be really juicy. And then on the 23rd, full moon in Sagittarius at 2 degrees. On the 23rd also, Venus will ingress into Gemini. And then on the 25th, Jupiter will ingress into Gemini. So that is what we're going to be going over. And then at the end of the podcast, we're going to open it up for a live Q&A. So if you guys have any questions on anything that we talked about, please ask. We love to interact with you. This is an interactive space. That said,
I can add to that there just for some context for everyone. Because I didn't really talk about necessarily my practice of astrology specifically. And so I have a large variety that I play with, right? So we could think of it as one of my teachers, Michael Bryan, says concrete astrology, where it's like, this is happening here right now, or in the future or in the past, whatever, like very concrete, very practical, like when are you going to sign this contract, blah, 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 right? And then I'm mostly known for medical astrology, or I like to call it holistic health and astrology. And so a lot of things are about the body as well. And then I also practice evolutionary astrology, which is about emotional, psychological dynamics, or sinking deeper into the soul. And so just being mindful as well, like when I'm saying things, it might come from any of those perspectives, right? And then also just being mindful as people who are taking in astrology. And I want to say that specifically to remove ourselves from just consuming astrology, right? Maybe even building a relationship with astrology. Considering that when you hear people talk about transits and things like that, oftentimes there's people who, so I would do it in like these 3 different sections. So there's a part that's called mundane astrology, where we're kind of talking about what's going on in the world, what's going to happen in the world. That's like one way you can look at transits. Another form is something I call planetary invitations. So it's just about what's going on around this time and what might be something to think about to help yourself evolve in your life, right? That would be a planetary invitation. And then the last layer is relationship. And so thinking about the transits as a relationship. So what are you going to do on that actual day that this comes? So taking notes of what people are saying, but also, are you going to go look at the moon that day? Or what did Jupiter say to you last night? And actually being in a relationship, because we all know somebody can say, hey, there's Cameron over here. He does this, this, and that. And like, I like to always compare. It's like Cameron, the astrologer. And then somebody's like, oh, I just know him as the guy that gives really good hugs. Right. So it's like, those are 2 different relationships. And so somebody might say Saturn is this, but it might show up in your chart different. You might have had different parents, and you might like to be disciplined, or you are a wild child and you want to do whatever the hell you want to do. And so Saturn sucks, right? So it's about relationship in that way. So just being mindful of these different ways of seeing astrology, because there is so much on the internet, like Lisa was saying, and it could potentially get confusing, but always at minimum, bringing yourself back to relationship in the present moment. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
Love that. And deciding like what resonates for you with astrology. You know, it doesn't have to be all those things. It can be one specific lane. It could be one specific way. But, you know, it is like a language. It's a conversation that you're having with the planets, in my opinion. So like, and deciding how that shows up. So definitely. All right. So we're going to start with Pluto stationing retrograde. Is there anything either of you want to say or do before we go into that?
Taylor?
Were you on the forecast in 2020?
I was on the forecast in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I was like, I forgot to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cameron was a part of me declaring myself an astrologer because you were on the forecast the day of my solar return of the Great Conjunction when I said, I'm going to do that shit.
Yeah.
So
beautiful.
So talking about Pluto, I was like, yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
We have to remember what was happening then when we're thinking about Pluto retrograde.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point in general as we move forward with all of this. A lot of times astrology and looking to the past can inform the future, and seeing what has happened, like with certain transits. For me, I really look at outer planets, and I see what has happened like generationally or like years ago, and how that really informs what's going on now. So Pluto.
Okay.
Unless
no, I'm hearing something. Yeah, totally. Okay, so also just because I haven't talked to everyone about like my perspective or relationship with Pluto moving into Aquarius in general. And so a lot of times when I was hearing about Pluto and Capricorn, it was like transmutation or breaking down of the old systems and structures and things like that. And that is one thing, but we have to remember as well, Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius. And so Capricorn is more like the past, and Aquarius would be more like moving towards the future. And so also if we're breaking down the systems that we currently have, it's also helpful to think about Pluto as a decomposition and like breaking down what has happened in my familial structure, right? And so with Pluto moving into Aquarius, I've been thinking of it as from the perspective of AI, but not like artificial intelligence, but that too. But ancestral intelligence. And just like, how are we breaking down things from the past so that we can transform the potential trauma that we've had in our lineages from our ancestral intelligence, and also the thing that makes us unique that is still collective and brings us empowerment through our lineages as well. And so just like really thinking about that and feeling into that. And when I say think and feel into it, I mean sit at your altar and like go back and think about the things that have happened over generations of time. I think that's something that's really important. And also, I find it important to bring that up because Pluto moves so slow. Because I want you to take your time with that. It's not something that you need to have an aha moment today or the next week, but like just be with that. And if you could just be with that during this transit, which is like 30 years, so like, there you go. Take your time. You got time. But I just think this could change so many different things. And then also transforming or transmutation of your relationship with AI. Even if this is something as simple as me making sure that I'm looking up when I'm talking to y'all and not just, degenerating my cervical spine by looking down all the time, right? We can change our relationship with these things. And also we have like infrared lighting that could like heal you. And that's pretty cool. So making sure we don't also descend into like some dystopian thing, even though that actually might be happening in some places. There's other places where things that are happening that are empowering, having to do with AI as well and technology. So just being mindful of all of that. So yeah, that's a lot, and that has to do with this month, but I need to get that as like a foundational understanding of how to look at it moving forward.
That's really important. And then just for context too, Pluto has had kind of a long road over the last year, but in January, Pluto moved into Aquarius. And right now, if you look up at the chart, Pluto is at 2 degrees Aquarius. So it's going to station retrograde on May 2nd. And let's jump into that. So any insight, you guys? Here, actually, it's not the right time. So
no, it's good. And also Mars like just went into Aries right here. So it didn't happen in May, but it just happened in May, right? So just being mindful of that, because the energy of Mars and Aries is just, it can be very go, go, go. So you might want to be mindful to know, go, 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 no, stop, right? So it's like these bursts of energy that might be exhausting in some way, shape, or form, but it also could be, I feel a lot coming up and I utilize that energy and then I consciously take a pause. So just being mindful that Mars and Aries is there for the whole month too as well. So everything we're going to be saying is going to still have that context in the background too. Yeah. But I don't have much to say about the Pluto retrograde besides that little tangent I went on. So I'm curious what y'all are feeling.
Mm-hmm. I think in general, when Pluto stations, there would be 2 considerations that I would take. One of them is that, like you were saying, you can think of what's gonna happen that day, right? And then what's the invitation? So on the day, 5 to 7 days before and 5 to 7 days after Pluto stations retrograde, that's when you're going to feel it. That's when you're going to feel the shift. That's when you're going to feel the transformation. If this is hitting your chart, if this is hitting something special for you. And on a mundane level, that's really where you're going to see it. So I didn't look up when Pluto stationed direct, but I would, if you can look that up for yourself and just look back at those dates and see what happened. Oftentimes there are earthquakes. Oftentimes there are tsunamis. Oftentimes there are geological shifts that happen. And so obviously it's nothing to be afraid of, like, oh my goodness, like these things happen and you just, that's the way life works. We're living these wild, amazing, incredible lives. So on a mundane level, those are things that I'd look out for, big shifts in power, especially politically, things like that happening. The invitation of Pluto stationing retrograde for ourselves on a personal and interpersonal level is, how do we want to use our power collectively and individually? How can we use it in the sign of Aquarius when it comes to technology? I think this question of dystopia and utopia is a really interesting one for everything that we're going to be talking about today. When it comes to Taurus, that's a communist sign. When it comes to Aquarius, that's a communist sign. It's community, it's communism, it's collectivism, it's collaboration. So how do we want to collaborate? And then when next month Pluto moves back through Capricorn, we can talk about it then. It's a slightly different invitation. And then when Pluto stations in Capricorn later this year, I think that's fall, another invitation, and then crosses back into Aquarius. So we really get to reflect on where we've been over the past, since I think it was March 7th or 22nd of 2023, when Pluto moved into Aquarius for the first time, and then it was January 20th of this year. So reflect on what's been going on in your life in terms of power and change. Who are you becoming? Are you embodying the phoenix in some way in your community? Do you want to change your relationship to technology? Do you want to maybe not do so much? Do you want to divest in something?
100%. And, you know, when we're talking about Pluto, and especially Pluto in Aquarius, like Taylor said, this really is about the collective. But it all starts with us first as individuals. So how are we upholding our power in order to empower our collective? How are we stepping into our true power? How are we even abusing our power in order to, like, how can we understand where maybe there are places in our lives where we do abuse our power, and that needs to be shed in order to serve people better, because everything we do, again, is energy and it affects everybody else. So really thinking about those things. And, you know, like through all of this, personally, I have noticed like Pluto retrograde and Pluto moving into Aquarius more so in the collective. And, you know, I do sound baths here with Adina, and right around these Pluto transits, people come in here and the energy is wild. Like, it is just, you feel it all in the room. There has been times where it's been like so physically hot. It feels like static. It just feels very, very elevated. So being able to understand that, and the fact that we do exude all that energy, and like how to like control that and bring it in. And, you know, that's like on the micro level. And when you think about that in a macro level, like how people exude their power and how they use their power, it really shows you like how powerful people are. So understanding how to control and use that, and not control in a hold on tight way, but like control in a way that's beneficial. So yeah, that's what I have on Pluto retrograde. Anything else with you guys?
No, not for me.
Okay, Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of echo what you said, I think if you have Scorpio placements, like personal Scorpio placements, you might feel it. Because I know I have a Scorpio moon. So when Pluto stations retrograde, I'm always in the shower, like feeling really big feelings. And like, I'm like, Pluto's stationing. So I would just like maybe think about that. And so not just for Scorpio placements, but if it's hitting, you know, you've got Leo, early Taurus, early Scorpio, early Aquarius placements as well, especially personal. I mean, if it's an outer planet for you, that's at the early degrees of one of those signs. I think it's more of potentially a turning point in your life for something that you want to do out in the world, not necessarily like in your personal life. So business or, you know, work or buying a house, or I don't know, just something like kind of bigger than you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to, you know, you brought up all the fixed signs. So Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. So, you know, this might be a little bit of a shakeup for all of the fixies out there. And if you have Aquarius rising, of course, this is going to be, I don't want to say disruptive, but you may feel like you are going through a huge change during these next 20 years. So, you know, just be aware of that. I'm not saying be ready, be prepared, but like just be aware, be mindful of all of that, because Pluto's here to, of course, create a life, but death, and then a rebirth within that life. Like Taylor said, the phoenix rising from the ashes. So if it's time for you to transform and you're holding on tight to what your old psychology is and like what your old thoughts, your old like mindsets are, it's easy to stay comfortable and it's easy to stay in the same place, but just really letting go of that and stepping into the new.
Yeah. And same for the late cardinal folks who they've been kind of like gripping hard, and it's like, I just want to tell them to breathe because you're almost through it.
Yeah. It's making me think about, cause I have like Pluto basically went over almost every planet in my chart over the last like so many years. And it like when Pluto started going over 6 of my planets, basically I was a football player from Philly, like, and now I'm a astrologer who talks to plants, right? And it's just like, it's like, try to hold on. Like, I was like, you were talking and I was like, yeah, try to hold on if you want to. Like, just know that the initiation is coming. Just like, let it go. I'm going to smile at you. I'm like, oh, it's coming. Don't worry about it. Like,
it's the biggest glow up.
Yeah.
It's the biggest glow up. Just let go.
Yep, definitely. And I think that's such a beautiful word to use for this, initiation. Initiation. That's what this all is. And Cameron, I'm curious, just because of the way that you view astrology, like through your lens. So say there's people out there in the audience or people listening, and they do have maybe a lot of fixed in their chart, or like, fixed. What would you say is something like maybe one practice they could do in order to like connect with themselves and let go of any sort of like control, holding on, rigidity? Is there anything they can just pay mind to every day in order to like go with the flow?
Totally. Yeah. The first thing I would say is start getting rid of stuff, period. And really what I mean by the first thing to do is think about how that just felt when I just said to let go of stuff, right? It's like, it's just the first thing. It's like, I'm telling you to go, like, there's this thing that happens where like people who are coaching or trying to motivate people, we tell them the thing to do and it's like very simple, it seems, but that simple thing is actually really, really difficult, right? And so just acknowledging, how do I feel about Cameron just saying letting go of something? Do I want to smack the shit out of him? Or like, it's like, because it can be a difficult thing. So just feel that first. So know where you're at with how it feels to let go of something. And then also watch where things are being let go of and it's outside of your control. And start to understand that wanting control is the lack of control itself. And also understanding that fixed signs isn't always about holding on to things. Sometimes it's about dwindling down to the things that actually matter. And so that's what I would say. Just like be aware of that. And once you get past that step, then hit me up and see if I can pull more things out of your hand. That's what I would say.
Yeah, love that. Okay, so that's Pluto stationing retrograde. That's the 2nd of May. And then we move into, on the 8th, a new moon in Taurus. So Cameron, I know you had, let me just get there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, something that my teacher, Judith Hill, has really pointed out to me very strongly, and something I've noticed, and this is definitely more on a emotional, psychological level, is when planets go over eclipse points, then they activate something in us that was happening during the eclipse times. And so during this new moon, Mars is going to be directly opposite of the eclipse that happened in Libra. So just saying that as like, be mindful in that day. If something comes up that feels kind of subtle, that probably is going to, it might feel a little agitating. So just be mindful of that, because it can be really, really subtle. Like, it's a thing that I've even seen with astrologers, like professional astrologers. People are like, I don't even see what's going on today, but I feel tense or something's going on and they don't even know what it is. And it's just that the echoing of that eclipse point. When I think of eclipses, I think of something happening and dispersing out in both directions. And so it's like this subtle thing, and it's just like echoing. It's like, don't talk to me that way. Don't talk to me that way. Don't talk to me that way. And it's like you told somebody during that eclipse, don't talk to you that way. And then somebody at the grocery stores talks to you that way. And it's like, if you don't know that that's happening, then sometimes it could be a subtle thing that we just kind of pass by. But it's something that could be very, very profound. And I also, because I'm a very investigative type of person, I just observe it outside of myself a lot of times. So if other people are agitated, I'm like, oh, okay, that was your eclipse thing. Got it. Yeah. And so that's something that I play with during periods like that. So, yeah.
Definitely. And in case there are people out there who are listening or in the audience, the eclipses are hitting the Aries and Libra axis, and this is happening until March. I think it's 25th, 2025, something like that, March 2025. So that is what Cameron's referring to with Mars hitting this eclipse point. And as you can see up here on the chart, if you're watching this and if you're in the audience, yeah, we have that 6-degree Mars up there. So, all right.
January 11th, 2025.
Oh, it is January.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Was there anything else you felt about the new moon, either one of y'all? Because actually, now that I'm looking at it a little more, it's like it's there with Uranus and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm curious what y'all feel off of that.
Well, we actually were talking a little bit before we started recording, and I think this is a really important point to bring up. So how many of you in the audience have felt a little bit people-pleasy over the last maybe like year or so? Anyone? Okay, Adina's laughing, raising her hand. Tabitha? Okay, or have noticed that you're people-pleasing and maybe not stepping into what you really want. You are more so stepping into what other people want in order to gain validation.
And not only doing so, but to your detriment. Like, right? We were talking about what is the definition of people pleasing. And it's like not just like making other people happy, but also making other people happy to like your detriment.
Yeah, totally. I always think of it as thinking about Libra maybe as like harmony rather than like fairness or like balance, right? Because when we think about balance or fairness, it's like I took out the trash twice. Now it's your turn to take it out twice. But it's like actually you're busy today and it would be harmonious for me to take it out right now still. And so just being mindful of the quality of harmony underneath the surface and allowing that to guide you more so than that which is fair or supposed to or should. With like with the Libra thing going on with the South Node there, it's like you're also considering if that's something that has been strong in your identity from the past, just based off the way you grew up. That's something to consider. And yeah, I would attempt to move away from that as much as possible. And specifically with this new moon, so every new and full moon is going to be ruled by a specific planet based off where it's at. This new moon is in Taurus, so it's ruled by Venus. And Venus is in Taurus. And when I think of Venus and Taurus, I think about like just really, well, for me, it's actually like sitting in front of food and like moaning basically. So I can find out what is my desire, like what feels good to me. And the more I sit in front of, it's making me think of the artichoke lasagna that Ashley makes and just like how good that feels. And I took that template away from, before it was lavender essential oil and now it's her lasagna. So it's just like when I'm having a conversation with somebody, do I feel like that lasagna feeling, or do I feel like I'm sniffing a plant that's like putrid or something else is going on there? So at minimum, if I can notice how I am going into people pleasing modes and that feels then I can move towards and there's like a new start to that with this energy happening here. So yeah, that's what I would add to it.
I love that. And thinking about that on the daily, like you said, being able to use that. And that is such a simple practice to just tune into what we like and what we don't like, honestly, right? Yeah. Honestly. And what resonates with us and what doesn't. Take a moment instead of rushing through. And if any of you listening or in the audience, have strong placements in Aries or Libra, you're going to be feeling this a lot more than, you're going to be feeling this big time. And it could be the opportunity and the portal for a new beginning in how you relate to all of this.
So I was looking up the Sabian symbol for Taurus 19, which is from 18 to 19 of Taurus, and it is a newly formed continent. Rising from the ocean. And some more context was like, after the crisis, what is left over? And as you were saying, the eclipses are over now, right? The eclipse season starts the lunation before the first one and then ends when the lunation after the last one ends. So we're ending this eclipse season, which feels like crisis, like a change of things happening. And so hopefully you're resting leading up to this point because we're having a dark moon, and then the new moon allows you to, start your energy again and kind of like look around and be like, all right, what's left? And like, what is the landscape? And read the landscape for yourself and decide what we want it to be with that Pluto retrograde and Pluto in Aquarius, and what did come to you during the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. What was that inspiration? And have you been dreaming over during the balsamic moon, during the dark moon? Have you been dreaming? What are the dreams? What are the seeds that you've been planting? And what seeds do you want to plant for this new continent, for this new world that we have the potential to build?
Beautiful. Yeah. Yep. Definitely.
Oh, she took me there. Oh, yeah, I went somewhere else. Yeah, I went to the new continent I was wanting to create. So
I also just want to read this that it says. This is from jamesburgess.com. It says, when the mind is open, then the spirit can enter. Pure receptivity that sponsors spiritual breakthrough. A mind that is free of the constriction of staunch belief and moralistic attitudes is free to be spontaneous. Then it is receptive to unconscious upwellings of inspiration, creating new thoughts out of which new realities can emerge and rise up.
Yeah, and it's right there with Uranus that like tracks really strong.
Right.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I just realized we didn't talk about this magical thing that is happening today before we started. Do you guys want to talk about it now, or should we circle back at the end of the podcast?
Let's go for it.
Yes, do it. Yeah.
Okay. Should have said this first, but if you do not know this, today we are experiencing Jupiter conjunct Uranus in Taurus. And the last time this happened, I believe, was May in Taurus. I believe it was May 1941-ish.
Yep.
Yeah.
May
Okay.
7th, 1941.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last time Jupiter was conjunct Uranus, it was 2011. Yeah.
I think it was 10 or 11. Yeah.
Okay. It could have been 2010, but
Or 11. Yeah, I think 11 is right. But I think maybe
retrograde.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think they danced a little.
Okay. I think
Somewhere
actually
playing football. I don't know.
you're playing football. Cool. Okay. No astrology back then, but
It's 14 years.
okay. Yeah. So this happens like every 14-ish years. And in 2011, this was in Aries, and now it's in Taurus. So we're talking about Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion, wisdom. It can be the planet of abundance, and we are talking about Uranus, which can be the disruptor or the breakdown and breakthrough planet. And then we're also talking about Taurus here, which Taurus is like our most. I'm looking at you, Mary Beth. Taurus is our five senses. It's our human experience. And also what I find with Taurus, it's our values. It's our value system. So we're kind of riffing on this earlier too. And Cameron, I feel like...
Oh, yeah, I remember now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking about earlier, thinking about Jupiter being in Taurus, about Jupiter oftentimes is about expansion. It also can be the removal of obstacles. I think that's something that we kind of overlook sometimes because we want Jupiter to give us dope stuff, but also sometimes just clearing the way so the dope stuff can come, right? And so, and Taurus is about the five senses. So thinking about removing the obstacles to me being in touch with my senses and my sensuality, and or expanding into my body so that I can feel more into my senses and sensuality. Right. And just considering that, and it meeting up with Uranus might mean something having to do where there's a breakthrough where like, oh, wow, like I really do need to just connect with my senses. And it's made me think about the class that Ashley taught last night over the clairs, and just finding relationship with psychic functions that we have can only happen through being in touch with the body. Right. So that the guru energy, but only through senses in the body. And I think that's a really important thing. And adding Uranus into that, Uranus oftentimes can represent being in connection with my higher genius, where things can just come through. But also sometimes there's like this subtle mental trauma that we have that doesn't allow us to come into integration to be able to hear that personal genius come through us. And so really just, ooh, my voice is changing. Okay. So even just right now, I would just invite everybody to just, if you're in a chair, just like scoot deeper into your seat. And if your feet are on the ground, maybe wiggle your toes a little bit or like grip the ground a little bit. And also considering that this could be a practice that you do throughout this month, because most of the planets will be going through Aries, Taurus, and later on Gemini. And what I want you to do is take your right hand and slowly just lay your head into your right hand. And slowly allow your right ear to go towards your right shoulder, letting your hand guide it gently. Maybe you want to be stagnant here or still here and just let it, hold it, caress it maybe. Find your thing. And then taking your left hand and placing it on your left shoulder. And just taking 3 smooth, long, subtle, calm, juicy, yummy breaths here. After those breaths, you can release the left hand from the left shoulder, place it on the lap, and as slowly as you can, bring your head back up straight with the support of your hand. And we'll do the same on the other side. So taking the left hand, meeting the face on the left side, maybe caressing, holding, thinking about the feeling of being held in and of itself, and slowly allowing the left ear to meet the left shoulder. Notice if you feel tension because you're trying to go too far, and consider in the most simple way what you need here right now. And then taking the right hand and placing it on the right shoulder. Modifying in any way you need to, even if it's just lifting the arm up, or if that feels uncomfortable, just keeping the hand on the lap. It's always welcomed. And then again, taking 3 slow, soothing, unctuous breaths here. And then releasing the right hand, laying it on the lap. Slowly bringing the head back to center. Taking your time. And just being mindful that, again, this simple practice can be super helpful while we're going through a time in which Aries, Taurus, and Gemini are going to be active with a lot of planets there. When there's a lot of planets in specific signs from a medical astrology perspective, that's what it is. It's just a lot of energy there, right? So just allowing yourself to touch the head, which is ruled by Aries. The lower jaw and the throat region is ruled by Taurus. And the shoulders are ruled by Gemini, right? And so no matter if you're trying to make sense of what's going on in the next month with all this information that you're internalizing, digesting, processing, you can always come back to that practice, especially if you feel like a lot of tension in those areas, because a lot of energy can represent a lot of tension. So also inviting everyone to consider, how could you take the idea of what I just brought in this present moment and just doing that for yourself, right? Instead of it being like, this is what's happening this month. It's like, if the moon is in Aries, give yourself a head massage. The moon's in Pisces, give yourself a foot massage. Simple things like this. And I would definitely emphasize the head during this month because Mars is going through Aries as well, which brings a lot of energy. The North Node is there. That also brings a lot of energy. And so there could just be a buildup of energy in that region of the body. So again, considering how we've been talking about planetary invitations, mundane astrology, and also relational astrology. So just want to weave that back in. So we stay mindful of that throughout the conversation. And also curious if anyone had any experiences during that or would want to share how that felt or like a recognition in any way, shape, or form.
It just makes me think about how Taurus is connected to the sense of touch in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so how important it is to just, how it felt good to just touch the face.
Mm-hmm.
And how it's important to tap into that. And maybe as the moon is like going through lunation, as the sun is in Taurus, exploring different parts of the body via touch.
Totally. Yeah, beautiful. So for everyone that's listening on YouTube, Ashley was just talking about Taurus in the relationship with touch and how it would be nice to just explore touch in general when it comes to the sun going through Taurus and also with this Taurus lunation as well. Yeah, thanks.
Beautiful. Does anyone else want to share?
You said the head was Uranus?
The head is Aries.
Oh, Aries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was funny because I have a lot going on right now. So putting my hand just like that and kind of letting it rest for a second,
Mm-hmm.
metaphorically, physically, spiritually kind of took it down a notch for me. Just because my head is like so much right now, it's so much I'm dealing with. So I literally was like, oh, okay, yeah, there you go. Just take a moment. But
Totally.
yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like Aries just being like that fire too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
beautiful.
Interesting.
Yeah, and your name's Adina, right? Yeah. So for the recording or on people on YouTube, Adina was just saying how pleasant it was to just, because Adina was saying that she has a lot going on in the head space, and it was nice to just rest the hand there. So thanks for sharing. Appreciate that.
And this is why we love Cameron, because he brings these practices that you can use every single day. And that's astrology in motion right there, like using our physical form, which is so primal and simple and beautiful. And that's how we can use astrology. We don't have to, it's good to know all the things, but you don't necessarily have to know all the things. But at the time, we just tuned into the present moment, and we were able to tune into that Aries energy, that Taurus energy, and the Gemini energy. And I don't know about you guys, but I definitely feel like a little more calm. And I'm also like, what podcast? I needed that little reset. Just kidding. But and when we're talking about Jupiter, Uranus conjoined in Taurus, I was thinking about this a lot this morning. I was thinking about this archetypically. So, Taurus is the bull. And when we think about bulls, I was thinking about honestly, I was thinking about going to the rodeo here in Tucson, and I was thinking about bullfighting, but also matadors. And when there are bulls who run towards red cloth, they're not running towards the red. They can't even see the color. I believe they're colorblind, actually. But what they're running towards is the agitation of the person who is using the fabric to agitate them, to provoke them, and to provoke them to run towards it. And, with Uranus conjoined Jupiter, I almost feel well, first off, let me say this. This isn't a transit that's going to affect you today. You're not going to have some big, awakening or breakthrough today. Maybe you will, but it's an outer planet, so this is probably going to take some time. So when I'm thinking about this bull running towards the red fabric, being provoked, it's almost tune into yourself. What is provoking you to change? Like, what is annoying you? What's kind of antagonizing you in order to change and up level your wisdom? And we're talking about Taurus here. So up leveling your values. Like, what is your value system? What's not aligning and what's making you feel agitated because it's not aligned? That's an invitation to start to create the change right there.
And I say that because so much of what you both have said, like Taurus is a throat. It's this very basic, it's very, I was talking about the toddler earlier when we were prepping, and it's almost like this guttural, instinctual, we have to go to the throat chakra. We have to say the weird thing, right? Taurus, Uranus. It's like saying the weird thing with Jupiter there. It's like you got to get it out. So I don't know if you've seen that reel that's going around. She's like, say the weird thing, and everyone's saying the weird thing. Say the fucking weird thing, y'all, because it's not that weird. It's not. And then you get it out, and you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Everyone agrees with me.
Yeah. So
You know?
Yeah.
And it's very Venus is the other reason why I wanted to say it, because I think of the story of Inanna, right? We're not in Venus retrograde, but we're going to be moving into Venus combust, which is something we might chat about. And Venus rules Taurus. And part of the story of Inanna was going into the underworld. The goddess goes into the underworld. There's a goddess who's hung from meat hooks. And she's in pain because she's hung from meat hooks. Like, it's painful. And I believe there's 2 flies. And Inanna's like, oh, my insides. And the flies go, oh, my insides. And they echo her. And she goes, oh, my outsides. And the flies echo her and say, oh, my outsides. So can we echo? Can we, yes. You know, can we echo? Can we affirm? Can we emote and express what we're feeling to affirm and value? What do we need to make meaning out of? And how does that align with our purpose? I think are some of the invitations. Yes. Yeah. And the one other thing, if you don't mind, I really want to, so I know I did this last month for the podcast, but I wanted to read that little thing that I wrote about Jupiter Uranus, because I'm feeling it in a different way since it's happening now than last month when we were preparing for it. So I wrote something about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, and my understanding and advice on leveraging these energies is that it's about spontaneous generosity in the simplest, most foundational ways, recognizing the divine abundance within and surrounding us, being generous with our gifts, talents, resources, food, land, and housing, finding inspiration, pleasure, healing, and even divine ecstasy in the simple truth of being alive in this magical world. Using these simple things to inspire others for learning, abundance, generosity, healing, and our highest and greatest good is the highest vibration of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus.
That is so beautiful. I want to take the mic and drop it. Like, seriously, I love that. And I loved that quote last time. And it does hit a little differently this time.
Right.
Yeah. But what I want to say to that is during this conjunction, what if we decided to practice and say that to ourselves every morning? What if we decided to call that in every single morning? It's not going to hit the same every single day because our days are, so different, but it could be beneficial. And, the more you say something like a mantra, the more it resonates, and what you put into your mind and your soul does come out into life. So I truly think I'll put that in the notes in the show notes in the YouTube. But yeah, I think that's really beautiful, and it's something good to call in during this whole period of time. Yeah. All right. Any more Jupiter Uranus?
It's going to echo.
Yeah.
Echo is a theme today, huh?
Or a reverberation.
Reverberation, yes. Because, and that's why we're talking about it, is not just because it's happening in April and this is the May forecast, but it's going to reverberate because it's going to get triggered by some transits. It's going to get triggered. It's going to trigger past transits if you've been talking about past and future and present. So it's going to make an opening trine to where the Great Conjunction was at 22 degrees of Capricorn shortly after the conjunction at 21, I think, Taurus. So that's an opportunity there. It's going to also, when it moves into Gemini at the end of the month, it's going to make it's going to make a trine to the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius that happened December 19th, 20th of 2020. So, and I think, Cam, you had something.
Yeah, just that the fact that Jupiter is going from a conjunction with Uranus, and then it's going to a sextile with Neptune, and then it's going to a trine with Pluto. And so the outer planets and Jupiter are just having a hangout session kind of for over the next month. And so for me, when I think about the outer planets, oftentimes I just think about, things that are beyond me. So that could be, if you're into working with the collective things, that works. For me, it feels more like something ancestral, which is beyond me, right? It's something that is beyond me, but it was infused into my reality as soon as I was born. And so just considering things like that, and that's more long-term past thinking or even forward thinking, but I think it's something to consider, and it could be subtle, but it's there. So that's the invitation.
Yeah.
Definitely. So yeah, for everybody listening and for everyone in the audience, just know that this is happening like right now, and this is kind of a long-term thing. So, Cameron invited you to think about it in a way that resonates with you, but also just think about like 2011 and kind of what you're going through then and how that may inform what you are experiencing now with Jupiter and Uranus. Also look to your chart, see where this hits in your chart. Where is Taurus? What house is Taurus in? Are there is this hitting any of your planets? Like really looking at all of that and making it a little more, like looking at it through your lens, through your birth chart. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to move on and we're going to talk about Mercury moving into Taurus, which, there's not a ton there, but that happens on the 15th. So
don't put your head in the sand. I saw this reel of a sheep with a bucket over its head, and it had some funny song about like not looking around. I think Mercury in earth signs, I try not to say this, but like I just keep seeing it. It's like ostrich syndrome, I call it, where it's like head in the sand, like, and it's not really, it's because they need more time to process. And so,
amen, sister.
Right? Like they need time. It's very slow in terms, and it doesn't mean that they're not quick-witted or clever, because they, depending on other things in the chart, they can be. But when it comes to big, difficult things that need to be thought through, Mercury and Taurus can be slow, obstinate, stubborn, willful, and not wanting to change its mind on something. But in the high vibe, it's got its values. It's got the things that it's really good at. And it's an opportunity perhaps to look at the economy, look at finances, look at things like that. And we're out of the shadow of Mercury retrograde. So those are all good positive things with Mercury and Taurus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I'm super thankful that you said that, because my Mercury's in the earth sign, and I definitely go slow as hell with certain things like that. And I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm all about it. And I can say that something about that does allow you to actually be thorough.
Yeah.
So it's just like being mindful that type of process can allow you to actually get the job done in a way that's like practical and tangible, and you can actually put your foot in front of the other one. But if you're going too fast, then sometimes you might not have the opportunity to still do that. So yeah, 100%.
Yep. And we should go slower in the world. It's just we're not set up that way right now.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of what I'm hearing from you guys is like clear and concise communication, and also like slow and steady wins the race. It's like take it down a little bit.
And tangible, like
intangible.
yeah,
Yeah.
not theoretical, not abstract. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Practical.
Well, a few days after that, on the 18th, we experience a Jupiter COSME. So let's get there.
And a COSME is when a planet and the sun are together within 17 minutes. Some people say 1 degree. Are you 1 degree or is 17 minutes?
Yeah, I like the 1 degree unless it's for astrological magic, and then I like the 17-minute window just because of meditations I've done.
Okay.
But don't be that persnickety probably. I'm building a new relationship with that word persnickety because I'm like that.
That's a very Mercury word.
I just said it and then I had to like look over at Ashley because that word, like I'm like working in my relationship with that word. Anyway, yeah, I think that Jupiter, and also something to be mindful whenever you hear somebody say anything about a COSME, that also means that that planet was with the sun for a while already. And COSME is like in the heart of the sun, or you can think of it as in the eye of the storm. Whereas when it's outside of that, like things might be happening that are subjectively difficult, or things that are being purified emotionally or psychologically, right? It shows up differently, I find, in everybody's chart, or depending on what season they're in. So I don't necessarily put too much emphasis on it's going to be difficult or you're going to be going through a purification process. These are both maybe things for me. But I also would say, if you know what your Jupiter means in your chart, and if you know what your Venus means in the chart, then just be mindful if there's something blocking it out throughout this month in general, because the sun is with Venus and Jupiter for a lot of the month in general. So just throwing it out there too. That was a little away from the COSME, but needed to be said.
Mm-hmm. I think the couple days before this are really interesting and magical because the sun, Venus is going to continue to be behind the sun. Mm-hmm. So we don't get the Venus COSME until June. But right there, actually, that's a really good day that I've been looking at. And we were talking about May 16th to the 25th, I think, for elective purposes of different sorts. And I was personally looking at this for business elections for a number of reasons. One of them is that a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in a business chart is a BFD, y'all. It's a big fucking deal. It's like, if you got Jupiter-Uranus in your business chart, congratulations. Those businesses do really well. And I get that from Grace Morris. So having the sun at the midpoint of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is a really interesting place to put it. Taurus is money. You want to make it, go get it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You've got Venus at home, exalted, like in Taurus. So it's not exalted. It's at home in Taurus. And really good, besides all of them being combust because they're under the rays of the sun. I mean, I like it. And you've got that stellium in the last decan of Taurus, in the last 10 degrees of Taurus, making aspects to that Saturn-Pluto conjunction we had at 22 degrees of Pluto and Capricorn. So even though that's not really active, although it's on the second house cusp of this chart that you happen to pull up by accident. So it's an echo, it's a reverberation, it's an opportunity to take what we've learned during the pandemic and move forward.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And for anyone listening, if you are thinking of starting a business or launching something, like definitely a good time for that.
Pick a good moon, though. I might go with moon in Cancer or something like that.
Moon in Virgo.
I was just about to go into like, if you don't know elective principles, reach out to a professional astrologer because those days aren't supremely good overall because the moon could be going towards something that's not fun.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
also be mindful of that. I mean, but there are some good days though. I really like them. And also with the combustion kind of concept, knowing too as well, the way I kind of think about it is if a planet is in its own home sign, when it is quote unquote combust, I just think of it as like a person having a bodyguard, So it's like there's something happening behind the scenes that could be like this purification process, but it has the bodyguard, so you can't actually see what's going on behind the scenes. So even something I've been considering is just thinking about launching something that someone can't see yet that's there. So that's like that's like getting, again, persnickety, but just always inviting people to think about these different layers. And if that doesn't land for you, then back off of it and maybe do that practice again and don't have too much in your head,
And maybe you don't want them to see it.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
Totally. And then from a different perspective, so Cameron, like during the Jupiter COSME, is there anything that you feel called to say in regards to something people can do, like to move their body or even like connect with themselves or...
Not this time around, only because I've been working with a specific preparation that has to do with Jupiter, and that's like what I've been focused on. So not this time, yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so that's the 18th, Jupiter COSME, and then we move on to the 19th, where we have Mars conjunct the North Node. And this kind of, in a way, is echoing back to that people-pleasing that we were talking about a little bit. Let me get there.
Yeah, I think it can really strongly, and even considering the fact that, like I was saying before, when a planet is conjunct one of the past eclipses and we see Chiron is there, and so that could be a potential of feeling energetically sensitive around asserting ourselves. And so that's always an invitation to like check in with your people pleasing when I feel sensitive about instinctually doing the thing I was already about to do, right? And so just considering that on that day, and also just Mars, Aries, North Node from a medical astrology perspective is just definitely give yourself a head massage or, yeah. So ice on the back of the neck at like where your spine and your neck meet, there's like a little point back there. If you happen to feel a lot of tension, you could put ice back there and just press it on that point. That feels like that day it might be necessary for some people. Of course, with medical astrology, it's going to be specific to everybody's chart and how that lands in their chart, but that's something that I definitely would invite in because there's just so much heat happening specifically in the region of the head.
Burnout.
Yeah, it could definitely.
This is when you get tired of people pleasing. What are you burned out of doing? Like, also look for the masculine, the male, the men, the fighters, the activists that are present, that are speaking, that are crossing your path, that you're meeting for the first time. I met my man on the last Mars when Mars was on my North Node. I met my man, so I'm just saying.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Oh, one last thing I would invite there on like a more like maybe mundane level is if there is a lot going on in the world that's like about like war and strife.
There
like
will be.
Right, yeah, and like when I say when there is, just be mindful of your relationship to that and not getting so caught up in it that you go into fight or flight mode looking at something on TV, even if it is disturbing. We still need to be sure that we regulate ourselves. Something that I've been thinking about a lot over the last few years is just human beings and our relationship with knowing what's happening around the whole world. And I don't know if our nervous systems are actually even ready for that yet. And don't shame yourself if you're not just digesting a bunch of violence and trauma all the time, because you can go down the street and help somebody still, right? And so just being mindful of your relationship to that and like, yeah, we don't want to dysregulate ourselves by looking at a screen. You can keep yourself informed, but not dysregulated, and just building a relationship with that is really important in the times that we're in right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that May 19th, you mentioned men and activism. May 19th, there's a worldwide event called the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. It's a motorcycle ride to bring awareness to men's health and suicide prevention. So there will be a ride here in Tucson. There's one in Phoenix. It's worldwide to raise money for various causes. And the fact that you connected all that just blows me away.
Yay!
Beautiful.
I got chills.
What's your name? Beautiful. So
I'll be doing the ride this year.
Beautiful.
That's
Thanks for
awesome.
sharing, Paige. So Paige was saying that there's a ride for Men's Health on the 19th, on the day we were just talking about. So
Motorcycles too.
motorcycle.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, motorcycles. Yeah, it's just like
Yeah.
badass dudes just
Yeah.
riding
Yeah,
around.
Mars.
And around the world, which
Yeah.
is cool.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Paige.
Yeah,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
that's a really good observation. One thing before we move on, I just want to say, you mentioned fight or flight. And I really think that when we, like starting today with Uranus in Taurus, conjunct Jupiter, we're talking about the bull, and I was talking a little bit about provoking. And a lot of times when that happens, fight or flight mode does pop up and it makes us react right away, right? So this is something to just be aware of through, I would say, this time. Make sure you have your fight or flight mode in check. Don't react right away when you get that feeling where you have to act. Just try to stay grounded. I would just tune into your body and, probably take a breath and just, tune in, do a small practice, like do the practice we talked about earlier where your hand is on your head. But I do think fight or flight mode is something that can come up during this time too, like this whole time.
Yeah.
And do you want to go to the full moon? Because I want you to say the thing that you said before about the other thing that you can do to get into your body, which you should do on the full moon day.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
what did I
So do you want to skip? Yeah, let's talk about
probably figured it out.
we can talk about the full moon, but then we'll also talk about Jupiter, Venus, Neptune, and moon.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, full moon. What are we doing there, Cameron?
Yeah, so the sun goes into Gemini on the 20th. Just want to throw that in there because it's like the sun's moving somewhere, which really doesn't always make it. It's not really that important always, but I just want to throw it in there. But May the 22nd, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, the moon is like in between Venus and Jupiter for like a quick moment of time. And also it's in a trine aspect with Neptune. And I'm going to be taking a really nice bath that day. That's what I'm going to do. And envision like the most lovely things that I can feel and do anything that brings me like moaning pleasure and sensations like that. So, and also whenever the moon is trine Neptune, not whenever the moon is trine Neptune, but a lot of times when the moon is trine Neptune, we could feel kind of like tired. And I like to like go into more like dreamy like states during that time. So also just being mindful that that happens in general, but also with the moon being enclosed, they call it, or like held by the benefics, which is Venus and Jupiter. That's something that I highly recommend on that day. It's looking pretty nice. I'm gonna be super chilling.
That's beautiful, and kind of a beautiful segue into that full moon in Sagittarius. So let's see.
Oh yeah, and Venus goes into Gemini too, right there. Maybe it's after it, but that's what you were talking about, right, Taylor? With the full moon, you were talking about the bath and stuff.
Yeah.
Did I say
that
something
we've
else?
got-
Or are you just talking?
No, it was really like the bath and the moaning thing I forgot about. But because we've got a number of planets at the anaretic degrees, it's going to feel like really beautiful in that way because we've got the 29 Taurus with Venus and Jupiter. So Venus and Jupiter, I think the day before maybe would have had their exact conjunction or earlier in this day.
Yeah.
At 29 degrees. We've got Neptune at 29 Pisces. We've got earlier in the day, the moon is going to be at 29 Scorpio, making a trine to that Neptune. So it really will feel like a release. It will feel like I'm ready. I'm ready to let go. I'm ready to change. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to move. And it's going to echo back to how Lisa opened with the Neptune, Jupiter, Venus conjunction that we had in Pisces on April 12th of 2022. So you have an opportunity here, not technically from, like a technical astrological perspective of that exact transit making its development, right? Like in a full moon kind of a way. You have transits that become bigger. But because the same energies are at play, we have Neptune and Pisces making a sextile to that Venus and Jupiter. So it's not by degree, it's not by like growth in the cycle, but it is the same energies. And so I think it will be an interesting day. Maybe people will drink too much. Maybe you'll go to karaoke. Don't drink and drive. But yeah, that Sag moon is like, hey, you know, and Venus and the sun in Gemini is like always wanting to mingle and have a good time. And I think you could blow a lot of money at a casino. You could blow a lot of money at the bar. You could blow a lot of money at karaoke. Someone might be buying everybody drinks, like, drinks on me.
Yeah.
So.
But that's why that bath the day before is so important to like cleanse yourself
Totally.
and get to cleanse yourself, like, you know, relax and go into this in what we may call like a ritualistic way, whatever ritual means to you. So these 2 days could be, the day before on the 22nd, I think that is a good day to take it slow, take care of yourself, whatever self-care means to you, like Cameron was saying. Yeah. Spa day.
I think too, it will find, you'll probably find it more important after you don't do it if you don't, because everything's starting to move into Gemini after that too, and so the energy quickens very swiftly. Like the energy starts to move very fast, and so that also is like an interesting setup that doesn't always happen, but it looks like very significant. Just like the sun goes into Gemini, then Venus goes into Gemini, and then Jupiter goes into Gemini, and then the full moon was just in the mutable sign, and it's just like things just quicken rapidly there.
And you'll eventually, as we move on into June, get square to Saturn and Pisces, and get a square to Neptune. So
Yeah,
it's going to be an
that
interesting.
definitely changes a lot of
That's
things.
next month.
Yeah.
But we're kind of ending the month here, like you said, with all of these planets moving into Gemini. So like the sun, Venus, let's see. Oops, sorry, I'm going backwards. Oh, I have it on now.
It's on hour.
Okay.
But Jupiter stays in Gemini until June 2025.
2025.
Yeah.
Yep. And then it moves into Cancer.
I'm so ready for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, like we've talked about all of these transits for May, but you were saying it moves into Cancer. And I think that's something that's really important. We were all talking about before. When we're looking at our chart and we're looking at these slower moving planets, it's like, what seed can we plant now in the moment to inform our future with these slower moving planets and even Jupiter? So like, yeah, you're excited about Jupiter moving into Cancer, but what are you going to do now that's going to make that so beautiful and make it feel good, you know? And I guess I'm not really asking you, but if there is something, tell us, you know?
Yeah, well, what I was thinking with Jupiter and Gemini, I've got a lot of thoughts about Jupiter and Gemini. Do you want to go first? Because I got a lot of thoughts.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So with Jupiter and Gemini, I recently had a conversation with someone. He was saying, I'm really tired of going an inch deep and a mile wide on stuff. And I'm trying to go, you know, really deep with something and develop expertise in an area. And Jupiter and Gemini, whenever I have clients like this or run into friends who have Jupiter and Gemini, especially from the 60s, I think maybe there was even like a North Node Gemini or Jupiter and Gemini conjunction. I got to double check that. But they're people who have multiple interests. And so in terms of my clients, they're always folks who are like, how do I take my multi-passionate self and like turn my tarot and my astrology and my books and my guitar picks into like a, you know, and then they've got 12 other things into a business that actually makes sense to people. And it's like, well, so I think, long story short, the invitation for Jupiter and Gemini, in order to make the most of Jupiter in Cancer, is to go an inch deep and a mile wide, meet a lot of people, know a lot of things, really, you know, develop your vocabulary, become eloquent about breadth, but also don't forget depth, because where you put the depth in, once Jupiter goes into Cancer, will become abundant. That's where you reap the rewards. That's where you flourish. That's where you blossom. That's where you grow. And so it is important to do both breadth and depth. But some of the things that I've said about Jupiter in Gemini It's about knowing that the teacher is the eternal student. It's knowing that the healer is the seeker. It's about being generous in your interpretation of communications. It's about knowing that we're about to move into propaganda. So question, right? Ask questions. Don't just talk. Listen twice as much as you speak, which I should start doing shortly. Use communication and journaling and what you think, your self-talk to heal yourself and others. Seek to learn, seek to heal, seek to share your depth of knowledge with those who line up to listen. Don't be chasing people who don't want to hear what you have to say. Do find one area at least to expand your breadth and one to expand your depth of knowledge. And ask yourself what skills and or information you're passing on to future generations in order to make a good decision about where you should go and how you should use this energy. What stories are you telling? What story do you want to tell about yourself? What stories are you capturing? Are you internalizing? Dust off your collection. If it's guitar picks or books or stamps or dolls or crystals or beads, right? Show it off to the world. People will be really fascinated by whatever your collection is. And then ask yourself, is it time to release that in some way? And what are you wanting to collect now? Talk therapy, developing skills that use your hands and fingers, words, or small objects, and engaging in dialectic is foundational and abundant with Jupiter moving through Gemini.
Nice.
Yes.
I love that.
That was beautiful. Yeah. That point about what are you collecting now and you're letting go of so you can collect something different. I think that's so important. And it circles back to what we were talking about earlier. And Cameron, you were saying a good practice to have right now is to release something. So like collection, it doesn't have to be material. It could be anything. Like, what do we want to release right now that we've been collecting? What have we been holding on to? What are we ready to collect now? And I guess it could be material, but it can also be like energetically, something in our heart, emotion, psychologically. So yeah.
Yeah. And it was making me think of a concept that is called polymyth. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that concept, but it's just a person basically like, you've heard people say like a Renaissance man, right? And that's basically what a polymyth is. It's like someone who does this, and that, right? And we don't even know how close we like all are to something like that, because I could be I'm really good at astrology, and all I need to do is take intro to herbalism, intro to movement, intro to this, intro to this, intro to that. And I already know like way more than most people. Right. So it's like, and I can just continue to like create like more wisdom and knowledge in the different areas that creates a cohesive unit. Right. And that cohesive unit is Jupiter. Jupiter creates cohesion, and Gemini is about gathering information and data. So how, in what way am I gathering information and data that's allowing for this cohesive thing that I do want to nourish and blossom forth? Specifically when Jupiter is going into Cancer, right? Again, that's a longer term thing. So this thing that's happening this month is reverberating out forward in a long term kind of way. So just be mindful of that and don't take it as, because some of these things is like, oh yeah, here it comes and here it goes. But Jupiter is going into Gemini and it's going to be there to stay for a long time. So really inviting everybody to sink into that and like think about the concept of the polymyth and just, what's your favorite thing right now? And would learning the art of logic for 2 months help with that? Would learning just like accounting on YouTube for 2 months help with your business, even though you're just a creative or something like that? Just little things like that to help with, your own version of that, which is a polymyth. Could be super helpful.
Digital marketing is another one.
I need that.
Jupiter in Gemini. Call me, y'all.
Yeah.
Jupiter in Gemini brings comedians, lyricists, songwriters. So that's all stuff to look out for. Like, I think Martin Short and Kevin James from King of Queens, that guy, they're born with that. The last time this happened, and especially because we want to look at a 59-year cycle, which is going to be Jupiter in Gemini and Saturn in Pisces, which was started in April of 1965. So we can look back then and see what was going on to get an idea of what's happening now. And then we can also look to when the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction happened May 7th, 1941 in Taurus. And when you overlap those two, what you find is Boeing, Israel, invading countries that don't want us, Iran, railroads. And I don't know if y'all know, but like we funded a railroad on the moon. Okay. So that's going to come up. And especially because in 1965, there was a Gemini mission that NASA sent out. It was called Gemini. And following Gemini was Mercury. So sometimes this shit is really literal. Maybe there'll be disclosure around the fact that there was something they found in Gemini that they didn't want to tell us back then because they thought we weren't ready. There's been a mass moving, apparently. I don't know. This could be conspiracy, so just... But there's some sort of mass. Have any of you seen this moving from South Africa up through the Atlantic Ocean? And they don't know what it is. Yeah, so that could be a disclosure thing. They think it could be a UFO. It could be something like an earthquake or something. They don't know what it is yet. Atlantis, yeah, who knows? The new continent emerging from under the sea. Oh, who knows? Right?
Yeah,
So...
definitely. What was it, Lizzie?
Somebody wrote a song about that. Way below the ocean where I want to be, you will be with. It was a Woodstock thing.
Oh,
okay.
wow. I think Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber got together in on this conjunction. So shoot your shot. Like I said before, say the weird thing and shoot your shot, because Gemini is a partnership. So if there's someone you want to get with, like for collaboration, go for it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I feel like a key word too for May, just in general, is reverberation. We've talked about that quite a bit. And we are dealing with outer planets too. And there's an echoing going on. So really tuning into that. Is there anything else going on in May that either one of you want to touch upon before we open up the Q&A?
Yeah, just being mindful of on May 28th, Mars is conjunct the eclipse point, and there's like release happening there for sure. And so just being mindful of it, because it's also with Chiron there. So just looking out for that subtle echo again, like I was saying before. And then, Mars conjunct Chiron, that's happening like 28th, 29th. So that's what I would say as far as that's the end of the month.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Relieve student loan debt now. Say it loud, say it proud. Also, medical debt, relieve medical debt. There's like RIP medical debt. And I say that because Mars is the activist and Chiron could be a debt jubilee. And with Jupiter and Gemini, we could look at really small things or individual people or individual dollars and things like that, dollars and cents. And we could be talking about education, and it's a tremendous opportunity using all that Taurus energy, which is about banking, which is about money, which is about finance, which is the basic rights and resources that should be available to us, and then looking at our children, looking at our education, our students, and that could be really good time to say these things and make that happen, or watch in the news for what's happening around that. I know that there was even more student loan debt forgiven because of something Elizabeth Warren did in just a couple days ago, which was mid to late April. So get after it, y'all. Mm-hmm. The students are going to keep protesting, and we want to protect them. And
Definitely. Yep. And, we've talked a little bit about it, but, I feel like we've been talking about Chiron during this whole eclipse cycle. So really, what are we healing or what are we working on healing ourselves in order to heal everybody else? Like, what wants to be healed right now? And there's a lot of stuff out there. And we know this with Pluto in Aquarius. There's a lot of expired ways of society operating, and we are seeing this all transform. So just keeping that in mind also, there's a lot building up going on, a lot of transformation here.
The last thing I'll say about that is that recently Bayer wanted to save $2.3 billion and decided to get rid of middle management. And they asked their employees to self-organize. This is tremendous because they may or may not realize what they're doing. Bayer's a German company, but they're global. And the repercussions that it could potentially have on the United States is amazing. It's incredible. they're not getting work done by having middle managers, and they're wasting $2.3 billion. But by doing that, they're giving up potentially the right for their employees to not organize. It's not even a right, right? It's our right to be able to organize and unionize. But that is like the logical next step is these employees go, okay, let's unionize, right? You want me to self-organize? That's unionization. And that 2.3 billion, if they're smart and powerful and can do the damn thing, they're going to recapture that 2.3 billion and distribute it across their own salaries, their own benefits. And imagine how life-changing that is, not just for them, but for their communities and their families and their children. So
It's huge.
look out for that, y'all.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, Mark's had a
sure.
lot of Aquarius, a lot of Taurus, so that's what this shit is.
Absolutely, and empowering. So,
Yep.
all right. Well, with that said, that is the May 2024 forecast, and we want to open up the space. So, if any of you have questions regarding anything we've talked about today, please raise your hand. All right, Lizzie.
I just want to bring up a topic that has not been said, and I think I see it in some of these charts, is what's going on with women's health and women's reproductive rights right now.
Mm.
I'm an old lady that actually marched in the original Roe versus Wade in Central Park with Betty Friedan and Victoria's Diamond. And we got this passed by pouring blood on the Washington Monument. I mean, it was rowdy. And we got these things passed, and now these things are being taken away. With all these Taurian planets here, which to me is good for the female side of what's happening, do you think there's going to be people speaking out during some of these transits, especially when they're getting the eclipse points?
So, what Lizzie is asking for those of you who are listening to the audio or watching on YouTube is she's brought up women's rights, and she is saying with all the Taurian planets, like, is there going to be basically you're like an uprising?
Can you go?
Whoops.
Can you go back to the Mars North Node conjunction?
Yes.
Because if there is a men's ride, I want to see what Algol's at 28. Okay. Algol's at 28 degrees of Taurus. And Algol is, you can, read other astrologers, go look it up yourself. Like, it's sort of the women's rights point that's been activated by the Roe v. Wade, by the, stripping of rights for abortion and for women being in the news, I think even that Supreme Court Justice, sorry, my brain's a little, but the latest one. Who? No, the woman, the black woman. No. Anyway, so it's a lot of women stuff that happens with that. So I would say that there could be a reaction after the men's rights thing by women who are like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I mean, that's a logical, like, we're talking about anger, we're talking about outrage, we're talking about activism. I think that's fair to say that there would be an equal and opposite potentially reaction. One of the things we didn't mention with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that we were talking about during prep was Rick Merlin Levine says that Uranus is the instantaneous resolution of irresolvable opposites. And so with all of this Taurus energy, I think there's a lot of Scorpio that's coming along, right? Opposites. Scorpio is opposites. Scorpio could be death if you want to look at it in an 8th house way. It is transformation. It is grief. It is that Inanna journey through the underworld of like the woman being hung from the meat hooks and being able to witness her pain and feel the pain. So I think it could, a powerful use of that ride of, men's health could be men saying men and women's health, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Dina.
I love that you brought all this up, because I've just been feeling for some time now, like a shift overall in the collective. Like, there is this death to the patriarchy, and that there's like this new rebirth of bringing in soft, vulnerable, feminine and coming into this new era, like this new like acceptance, and there's this pushback though still that's happening with man in power who don't want to accept that and who are not welcoming it in. So there's this fight right now, I feel like, that's happening with, you know, who's in power. And at least that's what I feel. You know, that's kind of what I've been witnessing, just like this overall rebirth of what's happening to our society. And the men that are, you know, willing to change and do it, and the guys who are pushing back and are just resisting.
Totally. Yeah. I would.
Three of them right here in this room.
Yeah.
It's 'cause-
Well, they're shifting. Yeah.
Because yeah, I have a lot to say about that, and like as far as perspectives and reflections on that, I want to take just a step back to what you were saying before about women's rights. And something that's been happening is there's someone named Ali Alomi who's been translating these old texts about what they called world astrology. And something that I've come to, and that's why I specifically in the beginning was talking about the difference between mundane astrology, planetary invitations, and relationship, because mundane astrology is a type of astrology. And it's a type of astrology that has techniques, and it has a practice, and there's a way that we can actually know what's coming. And for me, I would love to talk about Palestine, Congo, women's rights, health, all this stuff. I'm too ignorant right now to do it. And so I'm continuously learning about how to practice mundane astrology in a way that I feel is like integral to me and wholesome. But one thing I can say is that at the Aries ingress, it's a time where we cast forward to see what's going to happen for potentially the whole year or the next 6 months. And if we have to cast other charts that will say more or less about what's going to come. And in the Aries ingress this year specifically, we had Venus exalted in Pisces, but she was with Saturn, right? So women, what we found is that, or what Ali found really, is that women's rights and queer rights also are like combined in that way. They're both represented by Venus. And so it's, from me, like the way I'm feeling into that, and again, I'm still a student and naming that I still have my own ignorance in it, but there is an exalting that's happening, but Saturn's right there and she's running right into Saturn. And so just being mindful of that context. Are you rising up, and how is your relationship with that contracting force that might be trying to hold it down still? And if you know that's where we're at right now in the space-time reality, making sure that you posture yourself in a way that allows you to rise up and have a relationship with that thing that you feel like is constricting you. Like, what is your relationship to that thing, right? And knowing that also the way in which people say, death to the patriarchy, want to fight the patriarchy. The patriarchy is a little ass boy that's hurt, right? And so death to it, sure, awesome. That's some people's role. Other people's role is to like put their head on their bosom as well. And so just knowing what your part is in that process is a really, really important thing. And also just being mindful, it's a spectrum, right? I might be needing to support these people who are emotionally insecure and feel vulnerable, so they try to attain power that they don't have. And knowing that's what a person is doing when they do that, that doesn't excuse shit. But also knowing that, so that if nothing else, you're not experiencing this poison that was ingested into you or brought into you, and you ingested it and you're spitting it back out, right? Because that's the last thing that we need. So that's what I would say on that. And I would love to continue the conversation about the men's thing and the women's thing too, but I'm not going to do it here.
Yeah.
It's because totally.
You can also say that restriction can become restructuring.
Totally.
Yes.
So that once everything is taken down here, that maybe they need to revamp the way these laws are written, the way things can manifest in the future, so this never happens again.
Totally, yeah. And again, like I was saying, like in my own ignorance and also increasing clarity, I can't say what's going to happen because I haven't casted those charts or learned enough yet. I'm trying to be as present as I can with the mundane astrology, and it's saying that there's an uprising and a restriction. And that's what the chart is saying. And so I'm sticking to that right now. And so what you said is very true. And that uprising could be the restructuring, and the limitations that's coming onto it could be like a part of the story. And I would say I'm going to be cool in my own ignorance and say I don't know yet, and invite everybody again, even with what I'm saying, like take that in and see what the planetary invitation is and what your relationship is to that. But there are these like mundane charts that we need to be mindful that there is a concrete astrology that's saying like, this is the theme, this is what's going to be happening. And so I just wanted to be mindful of that and also share in my own ignorance, but also some perspectives that I still do have with that.
And you can say like what will happen, what is happening, but you can say what can happen as well. And
Totally.
I like to dwell in that Pisces possibility place of like, if I'm going to dream, how are we going to restructure? And if I want to subvert with Uranus, how would I subvert this? How could we actually use this as an opportunity? You want to take away my reproductive rights? All right, give my husband twice the salary because I'm not going to have it. You better give me maternity leave. You better give me my child food, right? What are we saying and what are we not saying about what needs to be done? That already needs to be done regardless. Like, yes, they should not and cannot and will not, I don't think, permanently take away our reproductive rights. Men are starting to go to Planned Parenthood to get vasectomies. They're expanding vasectomy treatment, whatever you call it, like opportunities at Planned Parenthood across the country. They've had it in Tucson for about a year. They just expanded it to Phoenix recently. So what else do we need, right? Like, okay, yes, and you're going to do this, so let's open the conversation to all of the things that we need. We're wildly behind every other country, advanced, developing, and otherwise in terms of maternity leave, in terms of childcare, in terms of the way that we operate. It's horrifying. It's disgusting the way that we treat our children and then force them into the world. So why don't we take this as an opportunity to say, let's treat our children better, let's treat our women better, and give them what they need in order to be able to reproduce if that's what you want them to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would definitely say try to start as local as possible. Yeah, because you change the world by changing what's happening down the street. And so just focusing in on that, because hopefully one day too, at minimum, like I live in Memphis, Tennessee, right? And so in the South, there's a stronger push for things to be taken away because of the religiosity and the people's beliefs there. And that's just going to be a stronger fight, period. No matter if they change it federal or not, it's always going to be more of a fight there. So being in the place that you're at and making sure you inform yourself as much as possible on what's going on, and also know your part, right? My part is like very different than being political because I work with people with herbs and stuff like that and empowering people to like be able to take on what could be their own reproductive health.
Who
as
said
much
that's
as possible.
not political?
Huh?
Who said that's not political?
I mean, I guess I don't frame it as political, so maybe it is. But and I also try to distinguish like what I'm doing from politics because I'm too ignorant, I think sometimes, and I can get myself in trouble. But I hear what you're saying, and we're going to have a conversation about that later, too. Yeah. Okay, cool.
And just to, like, well, what Lizzie had said earlier for the listeners, in case you didn't hear her, is there is a restructuring that goes on with the restriction. So that's where these points are coming from. Yeah. And then, Casey, you had something that you wanted to say? Yeah.
With this kind of thing that we're talking about, like whether it's world events like Gaza or women's rights or all people's rights, just to not have conversations with people and go, oh, I'm afraid that you might not feel the same way as me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to people please you by making you comfortable. No, fuck that. Like, I'm sorry. That's part of changing people's minds too. You have to talk to them and tell them how you feel. You can't just like shy away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And for the listeners, what Casey had said is she circled back to the people pleasing, and what she's saying is speak your authenticity, speak your mind. Don't people please someone because you want to give them the right answer. Speak your truth, even if your truth is different, right? Is that it? Okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I also would add to that what Casey said, just being mindful about like how we feel about these experiences. And how a lot of times there's just so much context that oftentimes we're missing that we do need to sometimes make sure that we're accumulating enough information so that we can do something with our energy moving forward that's not going to exhaust us and burn us out because we're excessively emotional about it. And so we need to make sure that those things, like it's a spectrum always, right? And knowing where you're at with that and just making sure that you, gather enough information so that you could feel comfortable and solid in your position so that you can make the change happen without burning yourself out in a way that the change can never happen.
Yeah, and I want to circle back and kind of loop that into because during Friday night's class, you were talking about basically, in short, having confrontation with someone. You didn't say those words, but that's basically what it was about. And we were talking about water and fire. And you said if someone comes at you with a lot of fire, perhaps they need water. So instead of getting in these, get in a heated conversation if you want to, like with all of this energy going on. Totally. However, know that it's an exchange. And what are you going to bring that other person in order to, I don't want to say bridge the gap, if you have a better word for it, but what are you going to bring to that person because they need it? Like the patriarchy is a herd ass man, you said, or
totally.
herd ass little boy.
Herd ass little boy.
Yeah. So like, what does
That's
that
my professional way of saying
little boy need?
Yeah.
What are you going to bring? What element, what energy are you going to bring to that situation? What healing does that herd ass little boy need right now? You know, like
totally.
what is that healing that you can provide?
Yeah. And the thing is you can fight any element with any other element at the end of the day. It's like, I'm not even saying to people like, don't say something that will like sharply penetrate that another person, because at the end of the day, that might change their mind too. Right. And maybe that's your thing. Maybe you're the person who comes up with the sword. And if you swing it correctly, it's a warning slice. Right. But maybe I pour water on it and it calms down and it starts to be like, damn, I never saw it that way. That's crazy. Now I actually, even if they respond in a certain way, right, they can respond with their energetic reaction. But sometimes just looking somebody in the face and just being open and vulnerable and sad like you really are, instead of trying to project your anger, can soften another person. Just be fucking sad if you're sad sometimes. It doesn't always have to come out in anger. It can come out in any way, shape, or form. And so just being mindful, like I was saying, it's all about, from that perspective, what Lisa was saying, it's about the elemental forces and how do you use your elemental forces to actually help the situation. And that might look different today than it does in 2 months. But just being with that is something that's really, really helpful and very impactful as you carry that everywhere you go.
Definitely.
It's a good point. I often think of Pluto and Leo, Pluto and Scorpio, Pluto and Aquarius right now. And so, right, what does air do? It can increase the flame of the fire of Leo. These Pluto and Leos are like incredibly triggered and incredibly solid and like Saturnian right now and like very crystallized in what they've got going on. And they're moving into that like, period of their life where it's moon ruled again. And it's like, it's just can be scary. And it's interesting to say like, oh, treat it with water. Yeah, you don't want to treat fire with air. You don't want to go to Thanksgiving dinner and have an argument and like give them air, give them information so that they can fight against, right? You do want to do earth and water, right? Like what do you do with the fire? You can throw sand on it, so you can put resources on it. You can like kind of quash it that way, or you can be emotional with water. And so if you're a Pluto, think about your Pluto sign maybe with these Plutos and Leo, if they're like, if that's what you're talking about in terms of conversations, what could your Pluto sign do? What could your Saturn sign do? What could your Jupiter? What can the rest of your chart and your elemental balance do with them? And I think the Pluto and Scorpio, which is at least my generation, like we've been fucking traumatized. Like we are emotional. We are going through it. We're thinking about our attachment styles. We're thinking about all of that. And what did the Pluto and Leos do in the 60s? They played music. So I'm like, should we play music at them? Like get our drums out? And like,
yeah, we should.
Yeah.
Liz says her generation.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please, Ashley.
Something that's been happening with everything that's showing up spiritually and ancestrally right now is there's wounds of the mother that are showing up, and that's showing up both environmentally and personally right now. So we can see that happening, throughout the earth. Like the mother
course.
Mm.
And so I think it's really important to recognize like all of this pressure and these things that we're feeling. We're actually feeling the rage, the anger, the sadness, the emotions of our mothers and our mothers' mothers who couldn't express that being expressed through us as well. And so I think it's important to recognize that because there's a lot of heaviness happening with that right now. So even just naming that and naming your own wounds and how that's playing out for you right now and recognizing how that's playing out in the world. And so like even you talking about like the men, right? I do believe like men are feeling a lot of feminine aspects right now, but I think there needs to be some recognition of how difficult that might be for them because there is this ideology around men needing to be strong and needing to be the protector and the provider, and they're feeling a lot of things. So really being sensitive to how that's playing out for them and knowing that we have to show up as the feminine to like hold them and receive them in that as they're going through transitions. So I just wanted to name that.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. That I don't know if I can recap all of that for our listeners, but
I can try.
yeah.
Yeah. So Ashley was just speaking to ancestral things coming up, spiritual things coming up, emotional, psychological things as well around the mothers and not only the mothers, but the mothers and things like that to come up to be processed. In also how men might need holding in some type of way, shape, or form, but really just sinking into what's coming up around the mothers. Like, and also I would just invite everybody to think about your mother and your mother's mother and how they have been nurtured or not nurtured, and how are you nurturing yourself and the people around you. That was not as depthful of a synopsis as I thought it was going to be, but I'm also like slightly crying over here. So yeah. It's 'cause,
Yeah.
It
yeah.
is Earth
It is
Day.
Earth Day.
Our ability to be here.
Yeah.
She's crying.
Totally. Yeah. I feel it. Anyway, somebody else can try because I'm feeling it, but yeah.
And that actually has been coming up for me a lot recently. I won't get into my personal stuff maybe afterwards, but I heard recently that we now understand that we carry the experiences, which include trauma, of 258 ancestors directly in our bodies. And that's a lot to hold.
Mm-hmm.
So to be gentle with ourselves.
Yeah.
I think it's important too, we talk about like this idea of like breaking generational curses, and what we don't talk about is how that's literally like breaking bones. It's like digging out the marrow to recode the DNA. And so again, like the responsibility that holds for us, like as this generation, even mothers who have children, of how we are literally like rewriting all of the codes of ourselves and those that came before us for those who are coming after us. And the weight of that, which is why things feel so heavy, because that's a big responsibility to hold.
Yeah, definitely.
So Ashley said breaking generational curses can feel like breaking bones.
Through the marrow. And
the
also,
marrow,
yeah, I mean, think
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that, digging out the marrow to recode the DNA.
Digging out the marrow.
Digging out the marrow to decode the DNA.
Recode the DNA.
Recode the
Recode
DNA.
the DNA.
I don't know what I just said. Sorry, I'm like
Yeah. No.
kind of in a yeah.
That's brilliant. And I've been having conversations with people who are like, how come every time and it's like almost, I don't want to say it's angry, but yeah, it's fired up. Every time I break a generational curse, there's another one that comes up right behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because there's at least 258 of them probably.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say, a question? Anyone in the audience? All right. Well, I think we're going to close out then. That was the May 2024 forecast and then some, I'm going to add, because the Q&A definitely went in a different way, and I'm glad all of that came up, and I'm a believer that we're always where we're supposed to be at the right time, and so we're all here to receive these messages and this insight today. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Cameron, for being on the show. Of course, thank you, Taylor, for
Thanks for having
coming
me.
back. So that's that. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Love
Thanks,
seeing
everybody.
you and having you here. Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you.
Taylor. Yeah.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Thanks.
Yay. Have a great night.